Do you feel like your relationships keep repeating the same patterns? Have you felt pressure to live someone else's idea of happy? In the past, I chased marriage, social expectations, and ended up in relationships that failed. Then I made a radical choice: solitude in a truck camper. And what I found wasn't loneliness, but healing. I chose to live in this truck camper to live a happier, simpler life. And I've gotten a lot of comments specifically about my relationships and choosing to be alone. So we're going to dive deep on those right now. So my choice to live alone in this camper was a deliberate choice. And a lot of it has to do with past trauma that I've been through, just my whole life journey, my relationships, my 2 failed marriages, and why I deliberately chose to live a life of solitude. Do I feel alone? The simple answer is I don't. I felt lonelier when I was in a relationship that wasn't working, and that is when I was surrounded by people. Now, truly, living in this camper and traveling by myself, I never feel alone. I'm going to get into my past relationships and what I learned, and I'm going to be very, very vulnerable and honest in this video because I wanted to help somebody. We all have had past traumas and things we have to heal, and we can't compare them to each other because it's very subjective. The way something affects one person, it might not affect another person in the same way. I did have a lot of trauma growing up. I can clearly see now why my younger life was very troubled and why I was so unhappy with myself. Most of my life, I felt that I was inferior to everyone in the world, and I didn't like myself. I went through severe depression and contemplating suicide when I was a teenager. I had a few close friends, but I didn't trust people. I put people at a distance, and a lot of that had to do with my experiences as a child. I was adopted, and for the first couple of months of my life, I spent in an orphanage. And my adopted mom, who I consider my mom, she said that it was really sad because the back of my head was completely flat because there were so many babies in the orphanage that each one could not be held and given affection. So they were just left in their cribs. The only time they were really touched is when they would change their diapers. And they had little bottle proppers feeding the babies. And she said that I slept all the time and I didn't cry. That tells me that I made a decision as a tiny infant that my needs weren't going to be met and not to bother to cry. Also, my birth mother was having a very traumatic time when she was carrying me because she was not married. My dad didn't marry her till after they gave me up for adoption. Her family's devout Roman Catholic. She knew that they would not accept this, and her family didn't know. His family didn't know. He put her in a little ratty efficiency apartment. She went to the adoption agency by herself. She gave birth by herself. And I can't imagine the stress that she was going through. I just remember as a child just feeling different. I grew up with very loving people. I love them with all my heart. I forgive them. There were times in my life where I couldn't because they were doing their best, but they had a lot of unhealed trauma. And a lot of things that I took personally was about them. It wasn't about me. But as a child, you can't rationalize that. I learned to be invisible because my parents, at times, they were very critical, and I felt like they didn't have an interest in me. And I noticed that even in my adulthood that I still felt like they don't have an interest in me. I can be traveling all over the country, all over the world, and I will go back to their house and they don't ask me anything about where I've been. Can I see your pictures? But then I notice that they don't do it for my brothers either. And it wasn't anything personal. It was that they have their own things that they're going through. When you have a lot of turmoil and chaos and you're trying to push a lot of strong emotions down and you're not talking to anyone about it, you're not accepting it on your own, you're not dealing with a lot of bad traumatic things that happen to you, that's your perception of the world. It's not that they didn't love me. They were just incapable of doing that at that point in their life. Now, I'm not saying my parents were terrible, terrible parents, but I was a very sensitive child. Things hurt me deeply. I would shut off my love. If my parents hurt me, they had this way of stonewalling. If you did something that they didn't like, and sometimes I didn't even know what that was, instead of talking to you about it, they would just shut off and ignore you. And as a child, even now, I'm getting emotional about it because it is a terrible way to relate to people. And it was very hurtful. So I would shut off my love. I would tell myself, wow, this hurts too much. I have no idea what is going on or what I did. So I'm just not going to love them anymore. But the thing is, when you make that decision to shut off your love, it shuts off your love to everyone else. It shuts off your love to yourself. You cannot make that decision in isolation. So I had a hard time with self-love. I had a hard time with letting people in. And I picked partners where I don't have to fully let them in. They had their own trauma. They had their own walls. So I don't have to let them in. I also had sexual abuse from my grandfather. And it wasn't only me, it was other female members of the family. So I kept that in for a long, long time. He passed away when I was 13, but it was my earliest memory. And that always made me feel bad and shameful. I couldn't open up to people. I couldn't let them see who I really was because I thought that they would just run away screaming because I was such a train wreck. And it wasn't until my mom, it was the day before she died, and she told me that I made her very happy. And I never knew that.
Reflecting on my childhood traumas, it's clear they had a profound impact. Since I was 14, I've been on a healing journey. I explored numerous paths: therapy, personal growth, countless books, coaching, meditation, yoga, breath work, and even psychedelics. So while moving into a truck camper was impactful, it wasn't a singular solution. It worked in combination with all those other healing modalities.
I was very guarded, and in relationships in my teen years and my early 20s, they were very superficial, and I would always get out of them before this person knew who I really was. I went into the Navy, and that's where I met my husband. I was very attracted to him. He was very witty. I felt societal pressure and family pressure to marry. I felt if I didn't get married, I was not complete. I was not a whole human being. There was something wrong with me. Nobody wanted me. And it's just the wrong reason to get married. My friends were all getting married. My siblings were getting married. Everybody asks you, so do you have a special someone? When are you getting married? So we got married. We had 2 kids. But during that marriage, I was very depressed. And he tried his best, and he's a good person, but we were very incompatible. I still love him. I still see him today. He's still very active in the children's lives and our granddaughter's life. But it's very obvious that we are not compatible as partners. We have a totally different views on the world. And it doesn't make one right and one wrong. It's just the way it is. And I did not see that. I found that if you have unhealed trauma within you, you pick partners on that level, on the same level of trauma healing that you're at.
And Dr. Gabor Mate talks a lot about this. Like, his work is all on trauma. And he says that we tend to attract partners who mirror our own level of unresolved trauma.
You always marry somebody that's going to trigger for you every unhappiness that you ever had in your childhood.
This isn't a conscious choice, but rather a reflection of our own emotional, internal landscape. He suggests that two individuals with similar levels of trauma may find a sense of familiarity and comfort. He observes that men often seek a maternal figure in their wives, expecting them to provide care and emotional support in the same way their mothers did, where women may unconsciously treat their husbands as sons, taking on a nurturing role and controlling role. And this dynamic is, I see it played over and over again, and I've seen it play out in my relationships. It puts a wedge in between that intimate relationship, and when that goes out the window, yeah, the relationship can just deteriorate quickly. And this happened in both of my marriages. And he also says the intimacy that comes from vulnerability and equal sharing is replaced by a sense of obligation and resentment. By understanding your own trauma and its impact on our behavior, we can break from these destructive patterns. When I was going through turbulent times in my marriage, I would drag my husband to counseling. I think couple counseling can work, but two people have to be actively involved and want to be there, not just one pulling the other one in. Then the only thing you can do is do your own inner work. And when you do your own inner work, the dynamics of the relationship change. And if one person wants it to stay the same and the other person wants a deeper relationship, sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't work out. I truly believe that life is happening for us, to teach us things. And if you don't learn that lesson, it comes back around and you are given another gift to learn it again from whatever your spiritual belief is, from fate, from the universe, from God. I didn't learn a lot of the lessons in my first marriage, and I jumped right into another marriage. And those lessons were a lot stronger. And I spent years in turmoil just trying to figure it out. It was very, very painful. And I went through a lot of roads. Blaming, anger, but blaming someone keeps you stuck. Then you have to realize what is your responsibility in this relationship, because I chose that relationship. The way our relationship was very familiar to me. I chose it. And there was a lot of love in both marriages. There was a lot of good times. I think it's wrong for me to just focus on the negative, because so many good things came out of it. And I learned so much, even though it was painful. So after these relationships, I chose to be alone, because if I'm not happy with myself, if I don't love and respect myself and have clear boundaries, because I didn't. I was still traumatized little girl with wishy-washy boundaries, getting into situations and making compromises that didn't sit right with me. But it was all a lesson. I don't regret anything. So there's a big, huge difference between loneliness and solitude. Society puts a lot of pressures on us to be social. People who are more introverted and do need time to be alone, or shamed, or called things like loner, solitude is very beneficial for healing, for self-discovery, for fostering self-love. I can meditate. I can go on mindful walks where I'm just present and enmeshed in nature, and that is so healing for me. Solitude is so important for self-reflection. Self-reflection without other people's opinions, without having to tend to somebody else's needs, is very, very powerful. And being on my own has allowed me to do that. I had a hard time doing that in relationships because I was trying to navigate somebody else's mood or somebody else's opinions or some drama going on. And it's been so healing. I needed to be complete in myself and know myself before I can get in another relationship. I would want to be in a relationship again. I miss intimacy. I miss closeness. But after knowing myself from experiencing this solitude, I know that I don't want a relationship like I've had in the past. I don't want your typical, what society says is a relationship, a 24/7 total enmeshment. I just read this quote that kind of summed it up and what I want in a relationship. And it says, a partner who supports your dreams and your healing is a precious gem, a heaven in human form. And this is Inward by Young Pueblo. One of my subscribers recommended this book, and I love it. Every morning I open it up and read a quote, and it's the perfect thing for what I need that day. But I opened the book and read that quote right before I did this video, and that is what I want. I feel like I am happy and whole in myself. So a partner would enhance that. But I don't need a partner to complete some missing part in me. And I would want them to be the same, complete in themselves, in touch with themselves and what they need, and be accepting and open to other people's opinions, to not take things personally. When people are still wounded, they take things personally. I was used to walking on eggshells around people, and you can never ever be who you truly are if you're walking on eggshells around people. It changes who you are. So someone who is on their own healing journey, I think relationships should be based on mutual understanding, respect, and equality. A non-traditional relationship that allows for personal space and individual pursuits, but also allows for doing things together and compromising and mutual understanding and deep conversations. That's one thing I learned about myself is I'm a very deep person, and I thrive when I'm around people that are open and vulnerable. That's how my friends are. When I truly loved and respected myself and forgave myself for all those years of beating myself up, of thinking that I was less than, of hating myself, I was able to forgive everybody. Everybody. I always used to hear that you can never truly love someone unless you love yourself. And I used to think, what the hell does that mean? But it's so, so true, because once you love yourself, you're coming at a point of pure love without any resentments, without any codependence. It's just love for the sake of love. The most important relationship that is working for me right now is the relationship with myself. I hope the relationship with yourself is worth it to you to nourish and to develop, because it's everything. I honestly love and respect myself deeply, and that gives me a better, happier life that improves my relationships with
everyone. I'm sending you all love. Thank you so much for watching this, and be kind. Be kind, especially to yourself, because that is everything. And I'll see you in the next video.